then it would be subject to a vote of the people. That project wouldn't have happened. So there are many inner city projects where we're trying to redirect development. The Life Sciences Center, the Midtown Miami project. Those couldn't happen. So where could development take place? Development could take place in Homestead, in the farther out suburbs and reaches where...
I don't think we're going to see anything happening in Homestead for a little
Not
while.
for a few years. So,
No.
but
Well,
that...
let me ask you, but you raise an important question, and I ask both of you. Let's say we have a Midtown Miami project that would be, assuming Amendment 4 passes, and we have a Midtown project, which is, where does that election take place? Is that a City of Miami election?
Okay, here, so let me answer your question. What happens is once it's gone through all of the process and it's been approved, the voters would then have an opportunity.
But is it City of Miami voters, or is it countywide?
It would be the City of Miami.
City of
voters.
Miami, so it stays within the city boundaries.
Now, let me just address that. Okay, there's been a description of a project that people sitting here, this Midtown Miami thing, people would vote for. It's a good project. Let me give you a countervailing example up in Deerfield Beach where I am, and I've represented the people. There's a golf course, it's called Tam O'Shannon. In 2002, there are two golf courses actually in the Crystal Lake area. One is the Crystal Lake Golf Course and the other is the Tam O'Shannon. The developer in 2002 bought that property with the specific intention, because I obtained the documents, with the specific intention of selling off, keeping and improving the Crystal Lake Golf Course and selling off the Tam O'Shannon Golf Course. Now I have people, this is a situation where you had people who, in the overall development, when that area was developed, the Crystal Lake area, for $35,000, they could pay a few $1,000s and they could be on a golf course. They're very elderly now. I have two who were World War II veterans. I have working people, and they had the green space. And now what you have is now you have a developer who wants to come in, developer who contributes politically to people, who goes over in politics at City Hall, and they want to change the land use so that now these people, instead of having this situation where they had green space in their neighborhood, it's going to be filled with housing. And I submit that's not fair. And if you have a situation where it's approved, and right now the voters don't have a chance to do anything about that, at least with Amendment 4, the voters would have that opportunity. And I'm going to tell you another thing. On land use changes, developers, at least up in Deerfield Beach, I don't know what they do down here in Miami, but they're always coming in. They would come in on the last meeting for a land use change and say, you have to approve it tonight because otherwise it'll be 6 months before we come in. Financially, they can't afford it. They keep telling you that, but they could afford, even these bailed out companies I told you, they could afford, when they got their over $2 billion of bailout money, they could afford to spend over $1.7 million to defeat this amendment.
Let me respond to that in two respects. Number one, the land use plan amendment process doesn't stop at the city council. And by the way, in Broward County, it would have to go to a vote of both the city and the county, because the Broward Planning Council, which is the county agency, administers the comprehensive plan as well as the cities. But let me get to the heart of it. That has to go to the Department of Community Affairs in Tallahassee. You know, there's a lot of controversy in Miami-Dade County over the last few years over proposed amendments to expand the urban development boundary. And the county commission did vote to expand that urban development boundary in a number of instances. In all but maybe one or two of those instances, the Department of Community Affairs in Tallahassee said no. And you know what? That hasn't happened. So there are safeguards. Even if a local politician gets weak-kneed and is persuaded by developers improperly, it has to go to the South Florida Regional Planning Council, which represents Dade, Broward, and Monroe County, which gets to comment on it and object to it, and then it has to go to the state. More recently, the Miami River, there was a series of zoning amendments that allowed residential development instead of industrial along the Miami River. The City of Miami Commission approved it. What did the state do? they ultimately rejected it. So the fact of the matter is, we have a system in place where even if local governments are making bad decisions, it is protected at the state level. The one final thing I'd like to say as well is, the answer is, well, if it's a good project, it's going to be voted on. Well, put yourself in the position of a businessman or an investor who's going to decide, am I going to build my life science center here with the University of Miami in Miami-Dade County, or am I going to go to North Carolina, or Georgia, or Virginia, or Tennessee? And they're going to go to Miami and say, look, we're going to take you through this entire process where the city has to approve your land use plan amendment, the regional planning council does, the state does. It's about an 18-month process. And then when you're finished with that 18-month process, we're going to put it to a vote of the people. So it may pass and it may not. Now you tell me where that person who's bringing high-paying biotech, life science jobs to this community is going to do. Is he going to risk his money and his time to build a project in the inner city where the UM Life Sciences Center is? Or is he going to go to a state where there's predictability? If he knows, if he goes through the process, if he does the proper planning, he's going to get approval for his project.
What about
This
that
is going to
point, John?
strangle. This is
I'm
going to
gonna-
strangle the
I will-
state's
What
economy.
about that?
I will answer that, and the answer
And
is,
please, everybody start thinking if you have questions.
let's
Okay.
deal with it. Let's deal with that example when you say, well, what would happen, or what do you think? The answer is yes, there are many reasons for the investor to invest in that project. When you get into your what do you think, though, you get into what do you think, though, when my highly paid employees come, and particularly if they came during the boom period when the real estate prices were so artificially high, and now because of the overbuilding, you've got this huge inventory of homes, and you have this huge inventory of condominiums. And by the way, these large developers were very much involved in the financing of these deals, and because of this, the people are not going to be able to get the values of their homes. And by the way, for the people who live here in Miami-Dade County, what do you think about the fact that your taxes haven't gone down, even though the appraised value